Welcome to the Airlift Workshop, where you get expertise from the air suspension specialists, keeping you on the road and in top condition. Today, we're installing a LoadLifter 7500XL kit on a 2017 Ford F-350. Remember, this overview doesn't replace your installation manual. Grab yours out of the box and let's get started. Raise the truck with a floor jack and support the frame with jack stands, making room for the air spring assembly. For filming purposes, we're using a drive-on vehicle hoist. Prepare the vehicle by first removing the stock jounce bumper and clip-in studs from both sides of the vehicle. Then, install universal nuts into the frame rail. Make sure to line up the holes in the frame with the threads of the nuts so that a bolt can be installed later. Install the upper chassis bracket onto the frame using carriage bolts and button head screws. The side of the bracket with a large cutout should be facing inboard. Torque to 38 pound-feet. Now let's assemble the air springs. Place a roll plate on top of the air springs. Then, attach a swivel elbow fitting to the top of the air springs and tighten with your finger. Next, insert carriage bolts into the square holes of the upper bracket. Secure the bracket to the top of the air springs with flat washers and hex bolts. Make sure the brackets are installed with the clearance slot facing the front of the vehicle, creating a left and right-hand assembly. Torque to no more than 20 pound-feet. Install the lower bracket cup onto the lower bracket main plate with a carriage bolt, flat washer, and nylon lock nut. Tighten the bolt slightly, but leave it loose enough to move freely in the slot. Insert 2 carriage bolts into the square holes in the lower bracket main plate. Set the lower bracket assembly onto the air springs and attach with washers and hex bolts. Torque to no more than 20 pound-feet. Attach the vehicle-specific lower leg adapter using a carriage bolt, flat washer, and nylon lock nut. Reference your installation manual to find the correct adapter for your application. Torque to 10 pound-feet. Now it's time to install the finished assemblies. Set the air spring assemblies into position between the axle and the frame. The lower bracket cup should nest on the jounce bumper strike plate. Push the lower bracket so that it's flat against the leaf spring stack. Both of the lower bracket flanges should be locked around the stock U-bolts. On the driver's side, the lower bracket carriage bolt will be between the hard brake line and the axle. On the passenger side, the bolt will be on the back side of the brake line. In order to protect the ABS line from abrasion, remove the ABS sensor line clip and zip tie the line to the hard brake line. Install the U-bolts around the jounce bumper strike plate and insert it through either set of holes in the lower bracket. Cap with washers and nylon lock nuts, then tighten evenly. Set the lower clamp bar over the carriage bolts and under the axle. Attach with flat washers and nylon lock nuts and torque to 16 pound-feet. Now go back and torque the U-bolt hardware to 10 pound-feet. Finish the lower bracket installation by tightening the nut that holds the lower bracket main plate and the lower bracket cup together. On the driver's side, remove the bolt that holds the brake line bracket. Raise the axle or lower the frame to align the upper bracket carriage bolts with the frame bracket. The bolt should protrude through the bracket. Place the upper frame brace on top of the bracket against the side of the frame. Attach the bracket to the frame using the same hole from which the stock bolt was previously removed. Secure the bracket by attaching a washer and nylon lock nut to the long carriage bolt. Torque the finished installation to 16 pound-feet. On the passenger side, begin by locating the oxygen sensor's wiring harness. If your vehicle has a factory fifth wheel hitch, it'll be necessary to remove this hardware in order to access the correct mounting holes. Attach the upper frame brace using hex cap screws, nuts, and washers. Use the previously installed carriage bolt, flat washer, and nylon lock nut to attach the upper chassis bracket. Torque the nut of the upper chassis bracket to 16 pound-feet. And torque the upper brace nut to 50 pound-feet. Make sure to zip tie the axle vent tube to the soft brake lines in order to keep it out of the way of the air spring assembly. Before routing air lines to the air springs, note the available length and pick a convenient inflation valve drilling location. We'll use the bumper as our drilling location, but you could also use the license plate recess, wheel well flanges, or under the gas cap access door. Place a nut and star washer on the inflation valve and push it through the previously drilled hole. Use a rubber washer, flat washer, and nut to secure it in place. Then twist on the valve cap. Before cutting your air line, remember to never cut from the side. you'll leave a jagged edge and ruin the hose. Instead, use a hose cutter or sharp razor blade to get a clean cut. Now, route the longest airline path first. Secure it along the frame using the provided zip ties. Once routed, measure an extra 12 inches, then cut the airline. Following the same guidelines, route, secure, and cut the second airline. On the passenger's side, slip the hose protector over the end of the airline. Now insert both lines into the push-to-connect fitting and push the hose protector up against it. Install the provided heat shield on the exhaust pipe, which passes near the passenger side air spring. Bend the tabs to provide a dead air space between the exhaust pipe and the heat shield. Attach the heat shield to the exhaust pipe using the provided clamps. Bend the heat shield for maximum clearance to the air spring. To make sure your airlift kit is airtight, inflate the system to 30 psi and spray a soap solution on all connections and valves while checking for exiting air bubbles.